Joining us now is Grace Reilly. Grace is a Gen Z conservative advocate with the goal of reaching her generation for conservative values and truth. She is a reporter at the American Spectator. She's also a student at Grove City College. Grace, thank you for joining The Road Forward.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's an honor, and as we look towards the upcoming school year, a lot of report cards have come in. We're looking at the failure of education system-wide in many ways. All the things that matter that we seem to be graded on internationally when it comes to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, all of those hard sciences American students seem to be failing at. But all the things that don't matter, the subjective subjects, and especially cultural Marxism, it seems as though we get a high score in that area. What is going on in education?
Yeah, it's really important to look at the why because it is a really significant problem. And we can look at the fact that this past school year ending just ended very dramatically with pride activities heavily permeating the school environment. It's really interesting because a recent Rasmussen poll showed that 60% of American parents are against schools counseling children on gender and sexual orientation without parental consent. Yet, there are over 3 million students who attend schools where they can change their gender or pronoun without parental consent, which is so interesting, especially looking further at academics. Because the National Assessment of Educational Progress just reported in their recent scores that math and reading are at historic 30-year lows. So looking at both of these things, we can see that schools, which are supposed to be focused on academics first and foremost, are letting academics slip and are focusing more on activism and other subjects like that, which is a serious problem because, again, education is so important and such a formative part of our young people and especially looking towards the future.
Yeah, Grace, I'm not that old, okay, but I can remember being a student and I could remember some days like when we had a strict dress code. And I remember there were certain days of the week where they were talking about, well, you could wear your favorite team jersey or something like that. And because it had a different kind of message on that, it was always being discussed with parents and teachers. Is that going to be a distraction? You fast forward to education today in terms of the social experimentation that's taking place with these young people. It's absolutely sick, perverse, twisted. Young people who have all kinds of messages, not just about Satanism, but you look at messages about the LGBT movement, and it seems as though it's a circus. The classroom is completely turned upside down. To your point, we have failing grades in reading. We have failing grades in the sciences. Where do we go as a nation when you think about China and Russia, other nations that are teaching and instructing their children to be strong, first of all, but not only that, to be competent in these areas? Who leads the future when you're competing with countries like that?
Yeah, well, and just that should be a wake-up call for our country and especially for parents because parents do have a role here and they have an opportunity to parent their children and help this at the most basic level because we can only expect this to keep getting worse while secular progressive educators and administrators keep hold on the education system. So with that considered, we really should be looking at how we can fix this. And I do think what's really interesting is that there are a lot of parents who are pulling their kids out of the education system, out of the public schools, because they're noticing this academic decline. They're noticing all of the other social issues that are being brought into the schools in place of academics and that are, as you explained, distracting from academics. So with that considered, homeschooling has gone up. There have been more people homeschooling in recent years. And with that, studies that show that students who are homeschooled are more successful academically and otherwise are also showing up. So I think that that's something to look at. And also, as parents, holding educators and administrators accountable when they fail at teaching, which is their most basic task, supposedly.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with you. If you look back in 2020, since COVID, homeschooling has grown nationwide by more than 1 million students. As you look back on comments earlier that you made, 3 million students in public education. Absolutely incredible when you think about the demographic shifts that come from that. Now, that we're embarking on yet again another school year, less than 60 days away, actually probably 45 days away. We saw that the Supreme Court overturned Biden's own bailout of college education. What do you see coming down the road in terms of the challenges in both the public school, but then even at the collegiate level?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, looking at again just the education itself and the problems that are there, that's the first challenge because part of the problem is that our society and those in higher education and all the way down to preschool have abandoned objective truth, which should be the foundation of education, objective truth. They've abandoned that and replaced it with the subjective my truth. And when that's allowed to happen, there's going to be a lot of discrepancies, distractions, and shortcomings of what people are learning. And if the education is not fixed in itself, then obviously there's going to be a problem all the way through. So I think first and foremost, looking at that and also looking at the way that especially higher education is running, because higher education nowadays is far worse when it comes to the bias and the pervasiveness of cultural Marxism. You have a lot of economic professors at these state universities who are self-declared Marxists. Now, most people listening are probably wondering, and I am as well, how can you be an economic professor and think that Marxism's a good idea with its record of failure and the fact that, again, it's just straight up inconsistent with good economic practices. So I think looking at that and how deep these roots run in the education system and how deep this problem is. And I also want to note as well that the failings in math and reading and the statistic I mentioned before, COVID and the results of the lockdowns highlighted that issue more. But none of these declines are just because of COVID. These are declines that have been present for years. So this is a problem that has been present. The education system is clearly broken. And I'll say as a young person, I look at this and I think that homeschooling is a really good solution. I think looking forward, I'm not married, I don't have kids yet, but I think my generation especially just got out of the school system and can really see and has seen firsthand some of the problems that are only getting worse.
Yeah, so well said. I think, too, what we're also seeing, Grace, is the rise of parental activism. You got groups like Moms for Liberty, Moms for America, and others that are around the country, and this even includes pastors who are showing up now at these school board meetings, and they're fuming. And we certainly understand. I'm a parent. I got 3 kids. None of my kids are in public school, but I do care about what's happening in public education because guess what? These are all citizens that we're going to have to do life with together, and I want us all on the same page, especially when it comes to civics and when it comes to economic systems, as you pointed out. I don't want a Marxist America. We need something that spurs on growth and productivity and the market-based capitalism, which is democratic capitalism. And we need a constitutional republic as the legal framework to put all this stuff together. And what better way to prepare the next generation than having a proper education? I really appreciate you coming on the road forward, really appreciate your work and reporting over at the American Spectator. Hey, Grace, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's my hope that this would be a wake-up call for parents to look into the resources and other options because it is so important. You can find me on Instagram at Conservative Grace and on Twitter at Conserve Grace, where you can see some of my reporting for the American Spectator and other places. But thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.